Hey, I'm Alex, and today on Big Al Books, I'm going to be talking about Kintu by Jennifer Nansubuga Makumbi. So this is a book that came out in 2014 in Kenya after winning the Kwani Manuscript Project. So that's a prize that is awarded to an unpublished work of fiction. This book won. It was released in Kenya to massive critical and popular success. And it was just recently released a few months ago by Transit Books in the United States. It's part of a way to get people in other places of the world reading this book. So the reason I wanted to pick this one up is that it is a multi-generational family saga, which I am a sucker for, and this one in particular deals with a cursed Ugandan family. This book has a very captivating beginning. There is a lot of murder and intensity and drama. The very first introduction to the book is a scene where a man is taken by the police and then killed by a mob. So that's a pretty dramatic beginning. And then for the first book, we go backwards in time, and it's set in 1750, where we're introduced to the patriarch of this family, and his name is Kintu. And he's been summoned by the new ruler, and he has to go on this journey through this treacherous stretch of desert. And he leaves with two sons. Let's just say that things go wrong for him on this trip, and when he comes back, there's a certain person who's very upset about what happened on this trip that he then goes and curses Kintu and his whole family. So it's no surprise that if someone places a curse on you, bad things are going to happen. So very quickly from that point on, Kintu's lives and the lives of his family very quickly unravel. The novel then jumps forward in time and is set in 2004 for the rest of the book. And the book is split into different sections, and each of these sections is essentially a character study where we are introduced to a new character who happens to be some kind of descendant of Kintu's line, and we explore what's going on in their lives. And since this happens to be a family that might potentially be plagued by a curse, we see that a lot of these characters are going through a lot of hardships. So through these hardships, Makumbi can explore some of the issues that are currently affecting people in Uganda. There are characters that are dealing with the AIDS crisis, with poverty, and with the aftermath of colonialism. So this book largely deals with the tension that exists in Uganda. So there are the more European views that the British brought with them, but there are also still a lot of traditional values and knowledge that existed in the country long before the Europeans showed up. And there can kind of be a clash in ideology. And this is apparent especially in the religious beliefs of the characters. So there are some characters that are these fervent, born-again Christians, and then there are other characters that practice this more traditional kind of spirituality, where ideas like ghosts and curses are more relevant. For some of these characters, there isn't a really either-or scenario. You may believe some Western things, but then also some traditional things, and Makumbi really explores how the Ugandan national identity can be very dualistic at times. To show this duality, Makumbi infuses both Ugandan and Christian mythology in her text, and there are two central figures. So there's the Ugandan figure of Kintu, who is kind of the founding father of the country. He's this mythical first man, and he's represented in the character of Kintu and his descendants. And she also writes about Ham, who is Noah's son from the Bible, and Ham is represented by the character of Kamu. The story of Ham has been grossly misinterpreted by some Christians in the past as a way to justify colonialism and slavery, because they somehow warped the story that Ham was cursed by Noah and God, and he was the father of this cursed race who just happened to be the African race. So it's a really messed up story that has a very messed up history, and through the story of Ham, Makumbi can explore the idea of not only there being this cursed family, but there being a cursed race. As you can see, Makumbi is not afraid to tackle some bold themes with her debut novel, and there's a very interesting introduction written by Aaron Beatty in this book, where he talks about how Makumbi is currently living in the UK with her family, and she had an almost impossible time finding a publisher who would put this book out. And a lot of the publishers were kind of saying that this book was like too African. I mean, this is a novel written by a Ugandan author for a Ugandan audience. and that certain Western readers may want to read about Africa, but they only want to read about certain depictions of Africa. And so this is a little passage from the introduction where he talks about that. If you must write about Africa, then you write about dictators, ethnography, and war. These are the sort of stories that confirm what people already know about Africa. And if you must write about Uganda, then you place a white character in the middle of the action. You write about Africans who have left Africa and migrated to the United States or Europe. You write about the legacies of colonialism. If you can't make Europe the hero of the story, and you can't these days, then you can at least make Europe the villain. That passage really got me thinking about how there are so many readers out there who are committed to reading more diversely, but it made me wonder if sometimes Western readers have a certain expectation on the diverse fiction that they read, and that you want it to be somewhat exotic and different, but maybe not too different where it's incomprehensible. And this is a kind of book that will really maybe expand your comfort zones as a diverse reader. I mean, Western readers are not the target audience, and there are some aspects of this book that might be difficult, keeping track of the characters and their names. You know, there's characters with multiple names, and there are certain subtleties that will go over your head. For example, a few of the female characters share a name, and if you were familiar with Ugandan culture, you'd know that that name means that that person is a twin. Whereas if you're not familiar with the culture, that name doesn't hold any special significance, and you kind of miss out on some of those hints. And I only learned about that after reading the book and having read an author interview. So there's, I'm sure, a million little details like that. But that being said, I found this novel to be accessible for the most part, and I really did enjoy learning so much about Ugandan history and culture and politics. So for that reason, I found this book really rewarding. There were some elements that I wasn't impressed with. I found that the beginning was such a strong opening, and it was so dramatic and intense. And then the rest of the book is kind of a lot more subdued. So I found that surprising. And the novel never really reached the same intensity that it had in the beginning. So there wasn't really a very satisfying climax. At the end of the book, all these characters are going to be coming together for this family reunion where they're going to try to like break the family curse, and I thought it was going to be a really epic ending, and it just kind of fizzled out. It didn't really do what I was hoping it was going to do. As for the characters, I found them to be well crafted, but they weren't particularly memorable. I don't think anyone in this book really leapt off the page for me. So I was kind of reading about these characters, but I wasn't very emotionally involved in what was going to happen to them. I didn't end up loving this novel as much as I was hoping to, but I'm still very glad that I picked it up. Makumbi is an impressive writer, and she smoothly carries you along through this complex novel. It deals with a lot of big themes, and it will teach you a lot about Uganda, so I can still recommend this book, especially if you are trying to read more diversely. Around this time last year, a lot of people were reading Yeah Jesse's Homegoing, and I could see how some fans of Homegoing might find a lot to enjoy about Kintu as well. I mean, this is also a multi-generational story of a family that connects the past to the present. Although Kintu is a lot less linear and straightforward than Homegoing, this one's probably a bit more of a challenge, but it's still a very rewarding reading experience. So if you're looking to fill that homegoing gap in your life, perhaps you should check out this book as well. So those are my thoughts on Kintu. Let me know if you've read the book or are planning on reading it, and let me know if you have any more thoughts on reading diversely and the idea that we might bring certain expectations and limitations to a text when we approach it from a different cultural mindset. That's all I've got for today. Thanks for watching, and see you again.